Greetings, Ben Ray here with another edition of SaaS Metrics School. Welcome. So, yesterday addressed what is a good customer retention rate or customer churn rate. So, we're talking counts, not dollars or revenue. And today addressing gross revenue retention. So, what is a good revenue retention rate? So, now we're talking dollars or whatever your currency is. So, let's talk benchmarks here. And I source my benchmarks from the best on the internet. That's Ray Rike at Benchmarkit.ai. So, you can go over there, check out their site, input your data, get your custom benchmarks back. So let's take a look at the data here. So when we look at SaaS metrics benchmarks, we have to be careful because some benchmarks, we can use the total population benchmark. So all the data in the survey, and then let's look at the resulting benchmark. But a lot of metrics, and that includes retention, we can't just look at that total number. And you see a lot of reports on the internet or in social media with just general population data sets, which is interesting, but really we have to dig a little deeper and look at our financial profile and line that up with the benchmarks that are available. So first, let's talk total population. And so according to Ray's data set, we're looking at bottom quartile at 79% retention, or the inverse here, 21% churn. And when I talk dollar churn, I am taking 1 minus GRR. Of course, we have to be careful of churn. That could mean just completely lost customers. Those dollars are out the door. Or we can talk downgrades and contraction. Usually when I'm talking churn, I'm including contraction and churn. So when we talk gross revenue retention, it does factor in both churn and the contraction. So bottom performers at 79%, median performers at 89%, and top performers at 95%, or 1 minus that, and we're looking at 5% annual churn. And usually that 95% number pops up a lot. That is best in class customer retention and gross revenue retention. So one thing I want to point out, and this is after looking at a lot of SaaS metrics for SaaS companies and their retention numbers, usually customer retention tracks pretty closely to gross revenue retention, usually. Now, if we see a big disconnect, let's say we're running 90% customer retention or 10% customer churn, and we're running, say, 75% gross revenue retention, then we might have some trouble with our data, or maybe it's the time periods that we're looking at. Usually those track pretty closely. So now, I like to benchmark SaaS companies based on their ACV. Of course, I'd love to slice and dice even further, but it just depends on how many companies put their data into these benchmark data sets. But I don't use the aggregate number in this case for gross revenue retention. I'm going to look at ACV. So let's look at how retention varies by ACV. So in Ray's data, we have less than 5K ARR ACV. And that smaller price point in this data set, we're looking at lower performers at 75%, median performance at 82%, and top performance at 90%. Now let's go to the complete other side, the enterprise. We're signing large enterprise deals with our customers. In this case, in this data set, it's ACVs above 100K. Now we're looking at bottom performers at 83% versus 75% for the smaller price point, and then 90% median. And here's that magical number again, 95% for those top performers for those greater than 100K ACV contracts. So I like to benchmark by ACV, but you can see how much of a difference we have in the ACV and the metrics. So what's a good dollar retention or churn? So we're looking at 95% or 5% churn for top quartile at 100K ACV and above, and 90% top quartile gross revenue retention or 10% churn for that lower, less than 5K ACV price point. So a little summary, little view of gross revenue retention and what the good metrics are. Thanks.